welcome to the Smartist Podcast. I want to start this episode with a content warning as we will be talking about things like diet culture and eating disorders during the episode today. So just a quick heads up to those of our listeners for whom that might be triggering. We wanted to let you know we'll be getting into that topic a little bit later. So with all that said, I'm very excited to welcome you to the Smartist Podcast. I'm Melissa Peck, a founder of Smartistry. And a lot of what my guests and I talk about on this series is about artist sustainability and how to become an empowered creative person. And a lot of times when we're talking about that on this podcast, we're talking about financial empowerment or resource empowerment, sustainability, that kind of thing, work-life balance. However, there is a topic that's extremely important that I've been wanting to talk about on this platform for quite some time. And it has to do with sustaining our bodies so that we can thrive and produce our work and live in a way that is sustainable for us. And so when I talk about the bodies, I mean specifically for today's episode, the food that we eat and the nutrition that we give our bodies. So in order to help discuss this in a really meaningful and knowledgeable way, I am so honored to welcome our special guest for this episode, registered dietitian and my very, very, very good friend, Maren Stein. So welcome, Maren. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
This is so fun.
I know. Also, I'm your best friend. Like, not very, very good friend, but okay. I'll take
BFF.
it.
BFF
Yes.
specifically.
Yes.
Specifically. So I wanted to share with all of our listeners and viewers that Maren and I have been BFFs since we were about 11, yes?
Yes.
Sixth grade, technically?
Around sixth grade, yes.
Yes.
You even, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's going to be that kind of episode. We grew up together, and, some of my fondest memories are of us in our resource and communication arts classes, and as very enthusiastic, shall we say, thespians in high school. We have many, many stories about our lives in the theater together. But yes. As we're going to talk about today, you in your adulthood have pursued a very, very different career path. So tell me all about that. How did your career as a dietitian begin?
So yes, when I was in high school, I realized that acting was just not my thing, and that is okay. So I went to school originally for I got a bachelor's in history education because I love teaching and I love history. And I didn't actually go and pursue that. So I went back to school a few years later to get my master's in nutrition. I love food. I love eating food. And I realized I'm kind of a science nerd. And so those things together kind of brought me to nutrition and to become a dietitian.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you. I left you speechless.
You did. You just, so I wanted to ask, I didn't put this in our prep questions, but can you just explain for our followers, what is the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
Okay. One of my favorite questions. So a nutritionist is somebody who can study in nutrition. So they can have their bachelor's, they can be taking an online 6-week course or something like that, get a certification. That though you can be considered a nutritionist from that. You have maybe some background. A dietitian goes and gets a degree, whether it's a bachelor's or a master's. They have to follow a specific program. And then they have to complete a 1,200-hour supervised internship that goes through different rotations. And then after they finish that, then we sit for a national exam. And once we pass that, then we become dietitians. And dietitians are really the only ones that can provide medical nutrition therapy, which means that if you have a chronic disease, like diabetes, renal disease, cardiovascular issues, a dietitian is really the only one who is qualified to provide you medical nutrition therapy specifically for that disease. So you see nutrition coaches online who can kind of give general advice, but a dietitian is only the ones that can deal with medical issues.
Great explanation, and that really does help me understand. So in your practice, because you work in the hospital environment, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So what philosophy or approach does your practice follow, and why?
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of our training as dietitians, alongside with doctors and nurses, are very weight specific and very kind of has like anti-fat bias. So I kind of go against that. It's kind of hard in a hospital setting, but really what I try to focus on is weight inclusive care, which means that I provide the same evidence-based recommendations, no matter what somebody's size is. I also believe in like intuitive eating and anti-diet sort of mentality, where I believe that all foods can fit into a healthful diet. There's no morality in food, meaning foods aren't good or bad. They just provide different nutrients. And really, I follow also like the health at every size, which means that no matter what your size is, you should be entitled to appropriate care, and you should be able to get that. So yes.
So, like you suggested, yes, that kind of diverts from what many of your peers in the practice or the industry use. Would you say that's true?
Yeah. So a lot of like our teaching is based on studies that show, okay, if you lose weight, you'll be healthy. So weight is tied to health, which is not true, because a lot of the studies that we use, there's a lot of confounding factors involved. So like you can't always talk about stress. A lot of people who live in like larger bodies, they maybe put off going to the doctor because they'll feel like the doctor is going to admonish them for their size, or they won't get the information that they need from them. They'll just say like, lose weight and come back. So there's a lot of stress to that, and that factors into how we care about ourselves. And so these studies that we use to indicate like, oh yeah, losing weight is healthy, it doesn't factor that in.
That's, I think, really important points that we share as kind of groundwork to what we're going to talk about for the rest of our episode. Mm-hmm. Living in a body that is considered at least plus size, mm-hmm, if not a fat body, I have encountered many different realms of bias and healthcare bias specifically, as well as how my body functions in an artistic or a performing arts arena. So mm-hmm, I'm very, very aware and sensitive to how we are talking about food in the context of, those that are creative people that are often multi-potentialite type of people who do a lot of different things simultaneously, and because of that are juggling a lot of different variables in their lives that contribute to their health and well-being, not just food. So when we talk about the challenges of being a working artist in that kind of vein, one of the things that many artists unfortunately experience is food insecurity. And that's what I wanted to talk about a lot with you today.
Yeah.
So can you explain the term food insecurity?
Yeah. So I pulled what the USDA states on their website to determine what is considered food insecurity. Now, what most people would think is food insecurity is actually there's two types. So there's low food security, and then very low food security. Okay, so what they mean by that is what we think of as food insecurity is somebody who is not able to eat certain meals throughout the day, or they have to ration their food in order to make it to the end of the month or to their pay period. So that's where, so according to the USDA, very low food security is reports of multiple indications of disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake. So basically like missing meals or eating less than, what you would normally just to get it through your pay period, let's say, or to the end of the month. Now, higher up on that is low food security. So that's the idea where it says reports of reduced quality, variety, or desirability of a diet. So little or no indication of reduced food intake. So that's the idea where you're able to eat all your meals throughout like your weeks or your month or whatever, but you're eating like the same thing. There's no variety. You're not really getting like a good balanced diet. Like you might be like buying stuff in bulk, like, the little like mac and cheese cups or like ramen, and like not really adding much to that, but you can still eat every day.
Okay. Thanks for
a lot of information.
No, thank you for clarifying that. So what we're talking about is either as a creative person, if I understood you correctly, you're either having to skip meals because you cannot afford or access food as often as your body needs it, right?
Yeah.
Because we all skip lunch now and then, but that's not the same as being food insecure, right? But the other thing is that what you have access to or can afford is not giving you enough of the spectrum of nutritious food, right?
Okay. Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And that is definitely something that, gosh, I have so many casual conversations about this kind of thing with creative people. When we are in the performing arts realm and we are like in tech for a theater show, it's just so common to not eat like you would normally in that period before you put up a show, because you're working so many hours and you are so far removed from your routine of buying and accessing food or anything like that, let alone the fact that when we don't have enough money and we're living paycheck to paycheck, this is where that financial strain starts to impact our health and well-being.
Right. Yeah.
So can you talk about specifically how food insecurity impacts the individual?
Yeah. So in regards to like in our country, okay, we have almost 11% of our households in 2020 were considered food insecure. Now, I don't know when in 2020 they polled it, but with the COVID pandemic, it most likely got worse, right? There were probably more houses who were food insecure because many people lost their jobs. Many people, didn't have maybe access to fresher groceries due to like people like taking stuff off the shelves and stuff. So that's still like 13.8 million households in America are considered food insecure. And then 3.9% of U.S. households have very low food security. So that's the ones that I talked about where it's like you are skipping meals. You don't have enough money to make it to the end of the month. So you're just like not eating. Okay. And so that equals out to like 5.1 million households. Now, what that does is not only are you losing the nutrition that you need and the energy that your body needs just to make it do its basic things like like breathing, having your heart beat, having your lungs work. But also it's like it's stressful. It puts so much stress on your body to feel like you can't go through to Friday to eat, you know? So there's a lot of, there can be a lot of shame in it. There's a lot of, like so much shame of being able to not provide if you have a family, to provide for your family, or even to provide for yourself. And there's all that like really like shitty talk about like, oh, like I remember like in the 90s, I'm dating myself. That's when we went to high school. Thank you. Like the whole like Clinton with like welfare and like even before that, Reagan with the welfare queens, like it just made it seem as if this is like an individual thing where if you're not working hard enough or if you're not doing enough, like this is your problem, when really it's a systemic issue that nobody really cares to do anything about. They're just like, you can figure it out. So yeah, it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of shame. And also just like physiologically, like in your body, you're just not getting the energy you need.
And of course, when we're talking about the financial link to the nutrition, we know that this is a problem that disproportionately affects women and people of color and anybody who's paid less than white men.
Exactly. Yes. And not only like, so it's also not only people in like urban areas. So you have like a lot of lower socioeconomic issues with people in larger cities. And those would be like more so the people of color and Black people. But you do have like people in rural areas who just don't have access to food, and they do not have maybe a lot of like job opportunities to make enough money. So this is a whole United States thing, definitely.
Yes, it sure is. And when we think about the wage inequality and the wage inequity that we have in the arts community specifically, and the way that so many jobs in this industry are internships, and unpaid, it creates a behavior pattern from a very young age of entry level into this culture. And of course, that's a self-perpetuating cycle in many ways. So when we talk more about the individual, are there specific behavior patterns or cycles that go along with food insecurity that you haven't already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, okay, first of all, obviously, when you're working in like an arts and an artistic community, like aesthetics are extremely important, right? Like it's a very visual platform, no matter what you're doing. So there's already stress, especially on women. I'm not going to say that men don't get this either, or don't get this as well, but like women specifically are made to think that they have to look a certain way, especially if they're like performing, whether it's dance or, acting. And so there's already stress on how to look a certain way. So when you're already dealing with that, plus you're having like food insecurity, it can lead to maybe some disordered eating, and that can also lead to eating disorders. Not to say that this is going to happen to everybody, but when you're in like a scarcity mindset where like sometimes you have food and sometimes you don't, like when you do get the food, it can lead to episodes of binging perhaps, where you just like, and binging is, I just want to state, is different from like binge eating disorder, where there are specific parameters that meet that. But you can kind of feel like, because, I don't know when I'm ever going to have this again, I need to eat it right now because I and so that's kind of the idea of like binging. And so it can create like a lot of like psychological like issues without having, by not having access to food regularly.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one thing that I want to do in our conversation today is talk about stigma. And, you mentioned the shame around this that we carry as individuals, we carry as members of families. I've had previous episodes about parenting in the arts community, and Of course, providing food and nutrition as a parent is so critical. So by sharing some personal stories and experiences, I wanted to contribute more to kind of pulling back the veil on what this looks like and my personal experience, in dealing with food insecurity, with disordered eating. I can just rattle off a couple of experiences that I've had. We talked about when I was in London, and my money that I had for my program, my master's program there, basically was enough for me to get to school, pay for school, get back to school, and go to sleep.
Oh my
And
God.
there were certain times where it was like, do I want to eat today or go to school? So I had to make that call a few times. And because of that, when it came time for me to look for some temporary work abroad, I wound up finding a job that had catering. Like, it was an events management job, and it had catering for these events. So I was doing exactly what you were saying, like binging like a squirrel, just like storing away food for the winter. That's the mentality I had. Like, if I eat now, I'll have some calories in me for the stretch ahead. That's not a thing.
Yeah,
that is not a thing.
It doesn't exactly work like that. No.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And I would just like take food home and like just hoard. It was a very hoarding related behavior that I had there.
Yeah.
Anything that was free.
You know what? I've never actually been like food insecure myself. So I feel very privileged in that respect, among other privileges that I exhibit and have. But like, I moved out to California. I did not have a job. And, instead of going without, what I ended up doing was putting all of our groceries on credit cards. Okay. And racking up credit card debt, which I am still chiseling down after like 12 years here in California, because I couldn't fathom not having food. Now, granted, the food wasn't necessarily nutrient dense, we'll say it like that. It was basically just like we needed stuff and we just, whatever. But I financially took the hit there in order to feed myself. So sometimes like it's really that dilemma to be like, okay, well, I don't really have like liquid cash or liquid money, a debit card or whatever, but I do have a credit card. So do I want to eat or do I want to be in debt? Right? Like, and that's a choice that people make. And if whichever one you choose is not a bad choice, it's just what you're given, and it sucks. So
yes, it sucks, but it's also you're living to fight another day. And that's important. And I think that deserves to be acknowledged of how worthy you are, that it's worth that. And I do, like, I will just put a little toe on the soapbox of saying that so much teaching around credit card debt and around managing debt assumes that you can just stop spending. Just stop buying things, stop shopping on Amazon. And
quit it with your lattes and your avocado toast, millennials. You could have owned a home by now.
Ruining everything. But the fact of the matter is, like, if you are food insecure, you are buying bananas, or whatever it is on that.
Yeah.
The other personal story that I wanted to share is that when I had my second child, so I had just become a family of 4, we were so over our skis in our budget that, and I don't know if many people who don't have kids know how expensive a can of formula is and how fast it goes. So I was formula feeding, and that just ate up all of our money, all of our like cash. So we were budgeting our food in terms of like portions of lasagna.
Mm-hmm.
So we were making a pan of lasagna and eating like 2 slices a day because that's what we could afford to make that was as nutrient dense as we could figure it out to make.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like getting down to the end of that lasagna was pretty intense, like knowing that you had to wait until the next paycheck to make another one. So I'm no stranger to this, and I know that many folks who are in between gigs, who are traveling for work, and who are also funding a business while they're doing their creative practice, funds are stretched very thin, and this is just much more prevalent than perhaps any of us are even aware of.
Yeah. And also just noting with that anecdote that you shared, that story that you shared, it's like the mental gymnastics and the amount of energy that you have to go through in order to calculate, like, okay, if I buy this thing, then this will give me like X amount of servings and it can last me like a week. And you're going through this in your head and it's just creating more and more stress. And it's just put such a toll on your mind and your body, because stress, we talk about like how we're really stressed out and our cortisol levels are like always off the charts. Like we really shouldn't be stressed all the time. Like our body needs a break. And so the fact that when we're put into these situations, not that we put ourselves into these situations, but when we're put into these situations, it is such so hard on our bodies to constantly be stressed out like that. So it's
yes.
taxing. Yeah.
Yes. And then because of that, like many of us have emotional connections to food, whether it's to eat or to not eat because of stress. So like it perpetuates another or triggers another cycle entirely. So, bearing in mind the stance that you shared earlier on the toxicity of diet culture, are there productive ways that artists can take more control or simply be more equipped to cope during periods of food insecurity or low budget? What can you share?
So number one, like certain things like diet culture doesn't own. Okay. So like I was listening to another podcast and one of the writers of the co-writers of the original intuitive eating book said like, diet culture doesn't own vegetables, right? Like, like you think about it, or like smoothies, let's say, like if we're going to riff off that, like, yes, you might have a visceral reaction if like you were in the throes of like diet culture or disordered eating, or even an eating disorder where certain foods just like trigger like the idea that that's like, okay, I associate that with my disordered eating. I associate eating, drinking smoothies or having just roasted broccoli and, that's with disordered eating, then yeah, maybe like you don't want to do that. But there are ways that we can nourish ourselves and focus on trying to give ourselves the most nutrition possible to help us do the things that we need to do without diet culture owning it, let's say. Okay. So number one, like, I'm sure, Melissa, you love the fact that like you can set a budget for yourself, right? Like in your budget, see how much you can pay for or you can afford for food. It could be for that day. It could be for a week. It could be for the month, whatever works for you. Like there's nothing wrong with setting a budget and making a grocery list with that budget and going to a grocery store with that list, right?
Yeah.
I know we'll talk about like meal planning in a little bit, but also I just want to state like the U.S. government provides food programs, right? We have programs that it used to be called food stamps. Now it's called SNAP. So supplemental nutrition assistance program. And
wait.
Sorry.
Can you say that one slower? Because I don't know how many people know what the acronym stands for. There is such shame and stigma around that program.
Yes.
Say it again.
Very slowly. SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Boom.
Okay. So usually you get like a credit card. It's like an EBT is what it's called. And so again, they're trying to like knock off like the shame that people used to have in regards to having to get like the actual like food stamps, how it used to be. And that just food stamps became like a 4-letter word. Like nobody wants to be like, ugh, I'm on food stamps. But if you on SNAP and and you have a debit card, like it's a little bit,
it's discreet.
It is discreet. It is discreet. And, each state has their own qualifications for their program because it's run by like a state. So here in California, we have something called CalFresh, which is what the program is called. I don't know. I tried to go through the CalFresh website to see like how much like you need to make in order to apply for it, like what like level you have to be at. And it was very convoluted. Surprise, surprise. Government is like a huge bureaucracy. And I couldn't really figure out. But if you're interested in a food assistance program, you can look it up online. I believe it's at the USDA website, and then it'll filter through your state. Unfortunately, some states that are run by certain types of governments and people have cut some of their assistance. So if you live in one of those states, you might have less access to that, which is unfortunate, but this is how this country works, it seems.
Interesting. You know what? My mind is blown just by recontextualizing the SNAP program. And do you know offhand, like, is there any limitation on the kinds of food that you would be able to buy with that program?
I don't believe so. I'm not sure exactly. I do know that there's another program called WIC, which stands for Women, Infants, and Children. And it's for women who are pregnant or lactating and then have children under 5. And so they can go and see if they're eligible for this program. And you get kind of like coupons or like little, I don't know, they print stuff
like
out.
Vouchers?
Vouchers, yeah. And they're for specific things. So they'll, and if you notice, if you go to like your local grocery store or Target or whatever, you'll see certain things that have the WIC insignia underneath it. So like the milk or bread, it'll be listed as like WIC approved, or like that can go towards your WIC. But for SNAP, I'm not exactly sure if there's a type of food. I do know though that a lot of fast food places, which again is not a bad thing. If fast food is there for a reason for a lot of people, and it comes in handy for people, they accept EBT cards, which is associated with SNAP. So I'm not sure of the details, but I do know that there's a lot of variety about where you can use your SNAP benefits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you mentioned what I've always considered to be the dirty word, meal planning.
Yes.
I always have such a knee-jerk reaction to that whole idea because in my mind, it's just like, it's basically about selling more Tupperware.
Yes.
That's how.
Okay. You're back.
I'm here. So
yes.
Let me restate that.
Yes.
So to me, the whole meal planning concept is basically designed to sell more Tupperware or more Snapware. And it is deeply connected in my mind, and always has been, with diet culture, and specifically with like grilled chicken. That's
Yes.
I associate like cutlets of grilled chicken in boxes. So how can I possibly get my head around it in a different way that makes it not icky?
Also, first of all, before I get into that, I do want to say, like, TikTok, like, is like obsessed, or at least my side of TikTok, like with these glass containers now that have like little compartments where you're putting in all of these accoutrements and whatnot. And it's like you're still eating the same thing every day, which is fine. And usually, like, with like what you're talking about, it's like grilled chicken or grilled salmon, dry, brown rice, and like steamed broccoli, which is like, why? I mean,
it's great on one day. It's fine for one day.
Right.
It's when you're on day 5 of the day that you planned from Sunday and that broccoli's gotten a bit crispy.
Yeah.
In not a delightful way.
Yeah. And there's like no seasoning on it. Like, I don't really know. So yes. So we want to move away from that. So meal planning, again, it's one of those things like diet culture doesn't own meal planning. And meal planning does not mean making the same meal over and over again until you're depleted, right? Like, it can, for many people, that works, right? And if it works for you, then it works for you, and that's great. Like, if it's easier, it can be cheap to buy in bulk if you have access to storage. Like, if you have a fridge that's large enough to, go to Costco and, get all this stuff, that's great. And if that works for you and you don't get sick of eating the food, that's fine. But we do want to introduce like some balance into the diet, right? And some variety, which can be helpful, because if you're eating the same thing every single day, you might be missing nutrients that you need. Okay. But like how I do meal planning is like, I have an app on my phone called Mealline, and I choose the meals that I want to make, and it gives me a grocery list. Okay. And then I'm able to kind of look through my pantry to see like, what do I actually need and what do I have? Right. And then from that, I don't assign days. It's not like, okay, today I'm making this on Monday and then I'll have this on Tuesday. It's just very much like, it gives me like information, like, okay, these are the meals that I have planned, right? You can be somebody who's like super organized, and want to have like a notebook that contains like what you're going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. And then you plan for that. And that's okay too. But really, it's just making sure that you have a plan to when you go grocery shopping. Okay. Like, it doesn't mean like that you have to do like these super vigilant like meals. Just you have a plan. However that works for you, however your personality, organizes stuff. And then you have food, and then you're able then, perhaps with meal planning, then you're able to sit down and maybe look at the coupons that you have available. Like, if you go to a certain grocery store, you can download their app and they'll have coupons, and then you're looking for that. Okay. Or like the stuff you get in the mail, like how you have like the different grocery store flyers, like see what's on sale. Okay. And then maybe say like, okay, well, this recipe that I looked at for this meal, I was thinking of getting green beans, but it looks like broccoli's on sale, or asparagus is on sale. It's in season. So you can kind of play with that. So yeah, that's how I look at meal planning. It's a tool that you decide how you use it, but at least you're planning ahead, and then you'll be able to set a budget so that you can get a variety of foods without feeling like you're straining your wallet.
Well said. We've talked many times on this podcast about being intentional with your money, and taking the blinders off, or the blindfold off. Mm-hmm. And like, you have to actually look at your bank account. You have to actually like just pay attention to what you're doing. So I think what you were saying sounds like, if you put the intention into planning what you're going to eat, mm-hmm. In a more thoughtful way, in a more strategic way, mm-hmm. then you're meal planning, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that you have to be buying like all the fresh fruit, or food. Your meal plan can be like, what prepackaged meals am I buying this week?
Mm-hmm.
Totally fine. Right? Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay.
I'll have you restate that when I come back. I think
Okay.
I froze.
Yes.
Okay, here I am.
What was I
Can
saying?
you say that one again? I was.
Okay. Process it.
Yeah.
So, meal planning and planning your meals does not mean that you only have to get like the fresh fruits and vegetables and whatnot. Your meal planning could indicate like what prepackaged meals can I get? Like if I buy a pizza, maybe that'll last me two meals, right? If you get a whole frozen pizza or whatever. And that's okay because prepackaged meals are a tool that you can use and there's nothing wrong with it. Also, it can be beneficial. Again, fresh foods are great, but look at your canned vegetables, your canned fruits, your frozen vegetables, your frozen fruits, these things provide you with nutrition and they're easy. If you have access to a freezer, they're easy to store. They won't go bad, so you don't have to use them in like a week's time. And you can put them in a variety of meals that work best for you, so.
Awesome. So if there was one thing that you wanted every artist or creative person who's listening to this to know about nutrition or their relationship with food, what would it be?
So I think we don't realize like how much nutrition really provides for us. And I'm going to get a little technical here, a little sciencey. Okay. So when you're constantly underfeeding yourself, where you're maybe just not providing your body with enough nutrition or enough variety, your body is not able to do basic things. Meaning that it puts a strain on our body to just do the simple things like, as I said earlier, having your heart beat, having your blood flow. And so you don't think about it, but when you're underfeeding yourself, your body's going to start pulling nutrition and energy from places that it doesn't want to. So when we don't have enough energy, which comes mostly from our carbohydrate and our fat intake, okay? So that's where we get energy to fuel our body. So then it's going to start pulling protein to change into glucose, which is our energy source. Now, where does it pull protein from? It pulls protein from our muscles, okay? So not just like our arms and our legs, which can be really important for somebody who is a dancer, let's say, which if you're constantly underfeeding yourself, you can be more prone to injury, which is not good. We don't want that. But also think about it if you're an actor or a singer, right? You need to project. And where do you project from? You project from your lungs and your diaphragm. Those are muscles. Okay. So I have a gnat, sorry. There's a gnat flying around. Sorry. So anyway, so if you are not nourishing your body, your body is going to start pulling energy or pulling protein from your muscles, like your diaphragm and your lungs. You're not going to be able to project. You're going to get tired faster. And that's going to affect your performance, right? And if you're just trying to continue to work and, have one gig lead to the next gig or whatever it is, like you need that energy. You need that. And it can be affecting your performance if you don't get that energy. So I got a little technical there, a little sciencey.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. And by the way, like none of this, I want to be aware and not centering able bodies or a particular kind of body in how this nutrition affects the body and what optimal performance is for any individual is unique to that individual.
Mm-hmm.
But, your point of, depleting, the body will deplete itself if it's not given a source of energy, I think is pretty universal.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate the science, and I just want to say, like, as a love fest to you,
Aww.
I'm so proud of your expertise, and
Thank you.
I love your approach. It means a lot to talk with you in your field of expertise and actually hear the acknowledgement of some of the change that's needed in the medical community. And it gives me a sense of hope that smart people are doing smart things.
Trying. I try to chisel away at the anti-fat bias in healthcare little by little. The doctors are very resistant to it, but I am persistent. So
yes, I appreciate it. It.
Yes, and I'm always learning as well. Like I did not. I had to unlearn a lot of what I learned in college, and I'm still learning. So it's still a process for me, but yes.
I'm very proud to be friends with you.
Oh, well, thank you. Best friends. Best friends.
So as best friends, I get to initiate you into this tradition that we have on this podcast of I'm going to call it the guest hot seat, because usually it's the artist hot seat, but you are a scientist.
Mad scientist.
Can you call what you do the dietary arts? Like, can that be a thing?
Maybe. Okay, yes, because I was like, is that like what like cooks do? But no, that's culinary art. Dietary arts will fit. Yes.
I love it. Okay,
I approve.
Yes, we've invented something. Okay, so what we're going to do is do some quick hot seat questions. The purpose of these is to create a patchwork of experiences, lived experiences. There are no right or wrong answers, obviously, and it's just a matter of sharing our experience and breaking down stigma around talking about money.
Okay.
So your answers can be brief, succinct, and are you ready?
Yes. What if they're rambling? Because I ramble, but okay.
No rambling. Get to the point.
Okay.
I would only say that to you.
Taskmaster.
Get to the point. Okay. Okay, so first and foremost, how would you characterize your current relationship with money, and has it always been that way?
I'm going to say improving. So that answers kind of both. It really wasn't, but yes, I'm getting much more focused on my finances now.
If you were to describe your financial habits, how would you characterize them?
Tightwad. Frugal. I do spend money, but like I get anxious when I like spend too much on myself.
What's your biggest area of financial or lifestyle struggle?
Oh my God, investing and retirement planning. I have no clue what I'm doing. Nothing. Zero. I'm 41. I have no clue. Nobody taught us this.
Nobody teaches this.
No.
Okay. Well, this question is usually for creatives specifically, but I will ask you, are you or have you been able to support yourself or your household financially with your chosen career path?
Yes. It's just me and my cat right now. So he's pretty cheap. But yeah, yes, I have.
Hot day. What is your vision of a perfect work-life balance for your future?
Really, like I'm rejecting the hustle culture that we've created for ourselves. And so I really just want to be like super chill. I want my work to be chill. I don't want to be like, I gotta keep going and being like major like girl boss vibes, but still like making money.
And what do you think it will take you to get there?
Work. That's succinct. No, I just mean like I actually have to work at creating a life for myself where I don't feel like I have to hustle.
What is the most valuable lesson that you've learned about personal finance in your career?
The most valuable
The most
lesson.
valuable lesson.
I don't know. What is the most valuable? I know. Learned about time. Really? Okay. So, mostly that like we're not paid enough. Dietitians are not paid enough, to be perfectly honest, as compared to other healthcare professionals. So that means like our expertise is not really looked upon, because people think like everybody eats, so I know how to eat. So we aren't really paid enough, I feel, for what our education is. And so, that's a valuable lesson. So I try to make sure that I'm paid my worth.
Okay, this is the speed round. So this is like call and response kind of thing. Ready?
Okay.
What has your experience been with savings?
Growing.
Debt?
Shameful. Shame, yeah.
Health insurance?
Confusing?
Life insurance?
Non-existent. I don't even use it. Like, I don't have it.
Financial planners as a profession?
Intriguing. I kind of feel like I would benefit myself personally.
I think I might know somebody that could help you.
Okay.
Saying. So that's the end of our hot seat. You aced it.
Yay! I thrive on good grades. Our high school instilled it in me, for better or for worse.
You're a great test taker.
Thank you.
Okay, so this has been so fun and such a departure from many of the conversations that I've had, which, tend to focus or have tended to focus on organizational change, systemic change, and the way that those systems impact us. And I'm really excited to have had this opportunity to talk about sort of the inside and how we nurture and grow ourselves. Mm-hmm. So Maren Stein, where can we see you next? What's coming up? Like, where do people find you?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me on. This was a blast, so much fun. And, and so really where people can find me is on Instagram. I've kind of been like a little like lazy with it lately, but you can find me at guilt-free_dietitian. I may also dip my toe into the TikTok game. Currently, I am a lurker, but I might like put some content out, but I don't know. But yes, Instagram, IG at guilt-free_dietitian.
And thank you so much for all the ways that you are contributing to a more equitable system of healthcare and more nurturing environment for us as creative people. This was so fun, and I'll talk to you soon. And thank you, everybody, for watching and joining us today.